Hello, I'm here today in my bedroom next to my pet snake, which, surprise, I have a pet snake. But today we're going to be hemming this dress that I have because I have a wedding coming up and I have had this dress for a couple years now. I actually purchased it for another wedding that I was supposed to go to, but then I ended up getting COVID and I also kind of forgot about the wedding until day of, which is another story that we'll get into another time. But I still have this dress and it still needs to be hemmed. So I am a petite person. I'm 5'2.5", which that half is important, but I'm 5'2" essentially. And so I usually have to take a few inches off of all of my clothes, and this is why I have a sewing machine. And I really love this dress. It has pockets, it feels really romantic, it's comfortable, I don't have to wear a bra with it, which I really like, and I just want to frolic in a meadow somewhere when I wear this dress. I just feel really pretty in it. So I'm excited to hem it and actually be able to wear it. But yeah, right now this dress is more of a maxi length on me, which isn't necessarily bad. Like, it still works, but I just kind of prefer a midi length on me. I think it's a little bit more flattering if I just take it up a few more inches, and I think it makes my legs look longer and it makes me look less kind of short and stumpy. And then I also think the fabric on this dress right now is just kind of overwhelming my frame a little bit. It's almost like weighing me down. So I just think bringing up a few inches will help a lot and just be a lot more flattering for me personally. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I also just got these shoes to go with this dress, and this is maybe TMI, but I have extra wide feet, lucky me, and it is almost impossible to find heels that do not look like they're meant for an 80-year-old woman. They're all like geriatric orthopedic shoes, and honestly, it's been getting me really depressed lately. So I'm not going to lie, I ordered like 10 pairs of shoes off Zappos to try, all in size wide or extra wide, and these were the only ones that actually fit me and felt comfortable and were cute. So I will not gatekeep them for all my wide feet girlies. I will link them in the description. Not sponsored at all. I just found one pair that are like my holy grail heels. They're so comfortable and they don't squish my toes at all, and they're not going to injure my feet, so we love that. This is the purse I'm going to be bringing for the wedding. So I also love how it goes with the shoes. They're both kind of like a champagne gold color, and I just feel so good in this. I'm excited to hem it and I'm excited to wear it. So a little bit more info about the wedding we're going to. It's in Trinidad and it's my partner's cousin's wedding. So my partner's mom is from Trinidad. So we actually went a few years ago for his other cousin's wedding. And I'm super excited to go back because Trinidad is just such a fun place and the people are so friendly. The food is so good. And Trinis definitely know how to put on a good wedding. There's just so much dancing and the music is so fun. So I'm super excited to go back. And I'm excited to wear this dress, and this is really the last thing that I have to do to prepare for this trip. So let's get started. I start by measuring my dress against a skirt that I already have that I like the length of, and I measure about 2.5 inches, so that's how much I'm going to be taking off today. So I start by pinning everything in place, and I'm just measuring 2.5 inches and then folding it up and pinning it. And I'm just doing a super rough pin here because I just want to get a general idea of how this length is going to look on me. So I'm not worrying about it being too clean or anything, and I'm just pinning it in place. And we're going to flip it over and do the other side as well. I'm going to put some last few pins in here, and then I think that's good enough for now. So I'm just going to try this on and make sure the length works for me. All right, so I just did a rough pin and I think this length is working. It's a little messy looking right now. It kind of looks like a bubble hem or something, but I will go ahead and repin it and iron it and everything. And overall, I think this length is working for me. It just kind of lifts it up a little bit, elongates my legs, and I think it's a little bit more flattering on me. So we're going to move forward with this length and let's keep going. Next, I'm going to iron my hem in place and pin it again. And so I'm just going to set up my iron here, and then I'm going to turn my dress inside out so I can better see what I'm working with and more easily fold it. And you can see the lining in my dress is actually shorter than the dress itself, which I think was a way for them to save money, but I don't mind because it means that there's less that I have to hem. So I'm now just folding over my hem and ironing it more cleanly, and I'm just measuring and making sure the length is correct, and I'm taking that 2.5 inches off. So this isn't my final ironing and pinning yet. Usually I like to measure twice and then cut once so that I make sure I'm not making any mistakes for any final cuts that I make. but this ends up being kind of a redundant step because I end up not actually cutting my hem, which you'll see in a few minutes. But it's better to be safe than sorry, so I just iron it and pin it in place somewhat roughly. And now I try it on one final time just to make sure, and everything looks good to me, so we're going to move forward with this. So now you can see I decide to not actually cut it, and instead I'm just going to fold it over twice to kind of tuck that hem in nice and cleanly. And it kind of aligns really nicely with another seam that already exists on the hem. So that's why I decide not to cut it. And also if I ever decide that I want to let it out and have it be the long length again in the future, now I can do that because I'm not actually cutting it. Since I am folding the hem over so many times without cutting it, it does make it really thick. So at this point, I'm just hoping that this doesn't cause any issues later down the line, and I'm going to move forward with this. But this is the most tedious part of sewing, in my opinion. Sewing, I have realized, is mostly ironing and pinning, and that is really why I don't enjoy sewing. It is just so tedious to me, but it saves me a lot of money being able to hem my clothes myself, so that's why I do this. And I think it'll look good when it's done, and I'll be happy that I did it. So I just keep moving forward, and I've sped this up 10 times for you guys, so you do not see how tedious and slow this actually is, but it is just a lot. So I think that is done, and there is the final hem, and you can see how I kind of have it aligned with the other seam on the hem, so it all looks really clean and nice. And so now let's start sewing. My grandma taught me how to sew when I was in 3rd grade. I used to go to her house every Wednesday after school, and she'd have some sort of lesson set up for me to learn how to sew. We started with the basics of just tracing shapes on a piece of paper so that I could get used to using the sewing machine. And once I mastered that, we moved on to making an apron and then eventually making a nightgown. And it was probably like halfway through the nightgown when I officially decided that sewing was not everything that I imagined it would be, and it was not going to be my new favorite hobby, and I would not be sewing all of my own clothes and fairy costumes and all sorts of things. I realized just how tedious it was and how much ironing and measuring and pinning was involved. But those basic sewing skills that I learned from my grandma, I have carried with me throughout my entire life, and they have come in handy so many times, especially just needing to hem so many of my clothes. It has saved me so much money over time, and I really think that basic sewing skills are a life skill that everyone, male and female, should learn. Just like cooking, cleaning, doing taxes. I feel like it's just one of those life skills that everyone needs to know. So I've just been setting up my sewing machine here by threading my bobbin, and I always have to refer to the instructions for this. And I have a brother's sewing machine, and it's a really good basic sewing machine, and they have really clear instructions, and it's just really user-friendly. So for doing the bobbin and for threading the sewing machine, I always refer to the instructions because I never seem to remember how to do it. But I have it all set up here, and I'm just going to test it out on a piece of paper to make sure that it looks good. And I think everything looks good here, so we're going to move forward and start actually sewing our hem. I'm sewing it about 1/4 inch away from the edge. I think that'll give it a nice, really clean look, and it's kind of aligning with the other seam that I mentioned before. I just start out really slow doing a back stitch here, which is going kind of back and forth over the same spot a few times to make sure that it stays in place. And so now I'm just kind of inching along really slowly, and the fabric is so thick since I folded it over so many times without cutting it that it's kind of shifting around as I sew it, and it's not really staying flat. So I just have to go super slowly here. So here's where things start to go really wrong. So watch that thread at the top of the sewing machine. Right there. Did you see that? So we'll watch it again. So right there, that's where it drops. So right there is where the thread is supposed to be attached when you thread the sewing machine, and I do not know what went wrong here. This has literally never happened to me. I thought I threaded the sewing machine normally, but apparently I did something wrong because it dropped and then I did not notice. And then I proceed to continue sewing, completely oblivious to what has happened. And this is going to cause issues for me later on, but I don't know that it's happened, so I just keep going along my merry way, sewing. I'm just trying to power through it, and at this point, I'm just worried about how the fabric keeps shifting and how the hem isn't staying flat since it's so thick. But I have bigger problems to deal with that I am completely oblivious to. But here I go, I just keep on going. So I'm finishing sewing this, and now I'm going to do a back stitch here to make sure all stays in place. And I think, oh, I'm done. This is great. Finally, this is done. This is hemmed. And so now I'm going to just start taking a look at it. And this is when I notice that something doesn't look quite right. I notice that the hem is starting to kind of come loose, like the thread is loose and it almost like didn't catch on the other side of the hem. And so this is where I realize what's happened, and I am ready to rage quit sewing. And so I end up taking a break for a few minutes, and then I eventually come back and I fix the problem because now I realize that it did not catch inside this little metal piece for some reason. And so I very carefully fix it and make sure that it's correct this time and just hope that whatever happened does not happen again. And so now we are just going to go through this whole process again. Yeah. So that was the moment that I realized just how much work I just added onto my plate by this mistake that happened. And so I have to seam rip the entire thing that I just sewed. And this is just a different form of torture, in my opinion. And so I've sped it up 10 times here for you guys. And this is just the most tedious process I've ever been through, especially when I just sewed it thinking that I was completely done. And now I added at least a couple hours work onto my time. And this is just so painfully slow. I would not wish seam ripping upon anybody. And I'm trying to power my way through it because I just want this hem to be done so badly. And it's at this point that my phone dies. So I go ahead and finish it off camera, and then I come back, and now we are ready to sew again. So I just test it out on a piece of paper again just to make sure, and everything looks good, as it did last time, but I'm just hoping that nothing goes wrong this time. And so now I proceed to re-sew the entire hem. This entire process between filming and sewing this and re-sewing it has taken me most of the day, and this is taking me all so much longer than I thought. But we are finishing it. I'm determined to finish it today. So I'm doing my final back stitch here, and hopefully it's my last one ever on this dress. And so I take a look at it to make sure it's all good. Moment of truth. And it looks good. Thank God. So I start taking out the pins, and I'm just taking them all out, and I think that's pretty much it. I think we're done. Oh my God, thank God it's done. Put it right side out, and that's it. I think we just need to try it on now. Oh, just kidding. We have to iron more. So this is the final step. So we just have to finish ironing the hem. This just helps make it flat, especially since it was kind of shifting around so much. This just makes it look nice and clean and finished. And this is the final step. And there we have it. There is the final hem completely done. It looks good. I'm happy with it. You can see how it aligns nicely with that other seam. And yeah, it looks good and it's done. So we love it. Okay, here is the final result. That took me way longer than it should have. It feels like it never goes smoothly whenever I hem stuff, but it's done and I think it looks pretty good. It's not perfect. Like if you look really closely at the hem, you can tell it's not done by a professional, but nobody's going to be looking at my hem that closely, and I feel like it's good enough. And I feel like this just makes it a lot more wearable for me having it this length. So I'm really happy that I did it, even though it was a super frustrating experience and I don't want to hem anything else anytime soon. I'm glad it's done. I saved some money. It's all good. Yeah, so this is the final result. And that's it today for hemming my dress. Thank you for watching, and like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.